friends. My name is Jackie with Cross My Stitches. I want to welcome you to part 2 of the tips and tricks videos. I hope you find information on the video helpful to you during your stitchy journey. I'm going to ask you to please give the video a thumbs up, and if you're not a subscriber, please think about subscribing. And let's get started with the video. The first thing we're going to share with you today is how I store my threads, how I keep them stored, how I put them on the thread drops, what I use for thread drops, and how I do that. So we'll start with thread first. So I have my thread on rings, very large rings, by color family. So this one's 3705 to 3799. It's all on here, and I have two long curtain rods on my walls in my craft room, which you've probably seen in previous videos, and that's how I store my fabric. Now I know a lot of you would be worried about dust and stuff hitting your floss. You can certainly take a piece of fabric, cut to the right length to go across all of it, and just lay it across and protect it if you want to. I really don't worry about it. My floss is not in sunlight. It is away from the sunlight, so I don't have to worry about the color fading or anything because they're over there, and I normally don't cover them. I haven't had any issues with them getting dusty or anything. So I put a little label on the front, and it is cut out by a punch, and I will show you that in a few minutes. And I label it with a label maker what number range it is, and I keep it all on the DMC goes all on one rod by color number from number 1 all the way down to 38 something, 3897, something like that. And it's cut to length, all the same length. Now when I cut my floss, I take a skein of DMC, and I will unravel the whole thing, put the two ends together, and then fold it in half 3 times, so it's about a meter or a yard. And then I will cut one end, and that's how I get the length of my floss. And that particular length works well for me, because if I'm doing over one, I can always pull some off and do one thread. I can fold it over and do a loop start if I choose, either a looping on the needle like I've shown before, or looping on the thread itself. And if I'm doing 2 over 2, I'm sorry. If I'm just using one strand, then I can just cut the one strand in half, and I have the length that I need. So it works either way for me, and I like keeping them this way. Now I will say that I made these from my Silhouette machine, which is similar to the Cricut cutting machine. You can also buy, I'm sure, heavy duty thread drops on Etsy, or use a punch. I used my cutting machine, and I cut all these in a thicker cardboard so they will last. Again, they are labeled with the numbers from the label maker, and they all go on the wall like that. So that's how I store my floss. I do the same thing with my fancy floss. It's on a separate rod, and it's all by color family and all the different manufacturers. Now I have, most of my floss is Gentle Arts, so I usually keep Gentle Arts alphabetized in the color families, so brown, red, green, yellow, purple, that kind of thing. And then the rest I'm not too concerned with, because it's a mix mash of Classic Colorworks, Victoria Motto, and Color and Cotton, and all those different ones. And I just keep them by color family, because if I'm converting something, I'm normally not looking for a color. Or if I'm converting, I'm looking at color. That's mostly what I'm looking for. So I'm trying to substitute a color, so I want it in color family so it's easier to look at. Now if I'm looking for a particular one, a particular name, then I know if it's brown, I just go to my brown ring, go through my Gentle Arts, and see if I have that one. So it just works for me. So I also cut my floss, I also make my own thread drops, sorry. And this is what they look like. So these can be done with punches, or they can be done on a die cut machine if you have a die cut machine. So I do these two different kinds, and I try to use a heavy cardstock, usually a 110 or a 120, and I use punches. So for the one I showed you before, which is this one, I use this punch. It is a 2.5 inch tag punch, and it comes, I believe, from Hobby Lobby. This is a Hobby Lobby punch. And that's what I use to punch out my little tags. So here's a bunch of the little white tags, and I will use those. For holes in the center of them, I have just a small Fisker's punch, and it's probably, let's see, do I have a ruler here? Yes. So these are 3/4 inch, I believe. Yeah, this is a, no, 5/8. This is a 5/8 punch, and that's what makes the punch in the center. I also have a larger one if you want a larger hole, and I think this one's an inch. Yeah, this is an inch. And that's also a, I think this was a Martha Stewart one from years ago. Yep, Martha Stewart. For the smaller holes, you can just use, for the top ring, you can always just use a regular hole punch. This is a 1/4 inch hole punch. But I find it much easier to use my Crocodile. This is a paper crafting item. It is by We Are Memory Keepers, and it has hole punches on both ends, and one is a 1/16 and one is a 1/4 inch, and you can punch through multiple papers with these. So when you put them in, it'll punch multiple, not one at a time like most hand punches. You can put a stack of 3 or 4 in there and just punch down, and you can punch quicker with the Crocodile. So I've had that from paper crafting as well, so I use that item. Now when I'm using my little thread drops, I want to share with you how I put them in my bag. So this is something I just kitted up, and these are my thread drops, and you'll see I use pencil. They don't have to be fancy. I have other things to spend my money on than fancy thread drops and things like that, because really nobody's going to see them. They're just in my bag, and I stitch, and they go back in my bag. And it's not necessary, for me anyway, to spend my money on thread drops or fancy things like that, because I'd rather buy other fabric kits and flosses than thread drops or thread holders. So this is how I do it. I write the name of the pattern on here in pencil, what fabric it is, and then the numbers on it. And of course you could make this pretty if you wanted to. You can see that these here are pretty drops, little floral ones and stuff. And what I've done is I've punched a white tag, and then I punched a piece of scrapbook paper, and I glued them together and then punched out the holes. So you can certainly do that and make your thread drops pretty. And I still write in pencil because I want to reuse them again. I'll just erase it and I'll use them for something else. But that's how I do my thread drops. And it works for me. I don't need the fanciness. If I need fancy, I'll make fancy ones out of scrapbook paper and cardstock. So like I said, I use on the white, I use a 110, 120 pound to make it sturdy enough to be used over and over again. So that is how I do my thread. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was the rings that hold my thread drops, or my thread holders. And these are flexible. You saw on my DMC that I have the 3-inch metal rings, which I really do like for the DMC when I'm hanging them on the curtain rods. Now I have little curtain clips. You can buy them at Walmart. I'm not going to pull one down to show, but they're little curtain clips. They're in the curtain department. They slide across your rod, and they've got little clips at the end. And that is what I hang my 3-inch rings from. That way they're easy to come on and off. I don't have to slide them across to get them off or anything, but they're called curtain clips. You'll find them at the Walmart. I'm sure other stores that carry curtain rods and stuff, you might be able to find them at. They're not very expensive at all. But this here is a flexible one, which I really love because it doesn't get all caught up in my bag. When you're dealing with rings, they can be a little bit difficult. This is very flexible, easy to use, and I prefer these. I get these on Amazon. These are 6-inch rings, and they are called wire keychains. Okay, and these are 2mm by 6-inch. There's 30 in here, and they're not very expensive at all. I'm trying to think. It was under $10. It might have been $6 or $7. But I get 30 of them. Every time I run out, I get more because I keep having more and more whips. But I will put a link below to these. I am not affiliated with Amazon or any other store. I'm just sharing the products that I use that make it easy for me. These screw on so they can't come unclasped. So they are very, it's like this. So you don't have to worry about your ring coming open or anything. They just screw on. And of course, they're great for your keys at home or your house key or whatever keys you need. But they work great for holding all your thread cards. So I wanted to share that as well. The next thing I want to talk about is fabric and how I identify my fabric and how I store my fabric. And I had a nice subscriber remind me when I couldn't find the name of my fabric because I had forgotten to write it on the fabric, that this is a great solution so you do not forget what fabric you're working on. I write it in Sharpie across the band. So when I'm using it, I know what it is at all times so I don't lose track. Because once I take it off the boards that I store it on, sometimes I won't remember what it is, or I'll forget to put it in my notes on my app, or I'll forget to write it on a card in my bag. So as soon as it comes off the card, this is what I do. This is 32 count natural. I don't normally write the size on it because I'm already going to use it, so I know it's big enough for what I need it for. If I cut off any extra, I again will write on it before I put it back on board or whatever I store it with. I'll write it across. Now this one I wrote on the selvage, which makes it real easy. But if I don't have selvage on a piece, I will certainly write it across the actual linen and stuff, because we all know that that will get cut off. So more times than not, we cut off to make it size the way we need it. So I don't worry about the Sharpie interfering with anything, and it works for me to remember what fabric I have and what I'm using at all times. Now I store my fabric on comic board, which is this one here. This is the one I get. It is from Amazon again. It is 7.5 by 10.5. There's 100 boards in here. I know it's under $20. I can't remember. I will link it below. You certainly can choose other brands or other ones, different sizes, but this is what I use. It's a 24-point board, and it's a nice sturdy board. So it looks like this. It's just a big white piece of board that's not too sturdy. It's not like foam core or matte board. It's a little flexible, and it's got a shiny side and a matte side. And this is how I store my fabrics. So I cut them down to the size that I want. I'm thinking that the ones I cut down are, I'll tell you here in a second, they are 10.5 by 5. So that's the size that I use. These come 10.5, so it's 7.5, I cut it down to 5 because it fits the drawer that they go in. So these go in my drawer, in my chest, and I don't want them to be too big, and I wanted them to be able to fit in the drawer. I write the information on the side. So this is 16 count Aida, the size of it, the brand, the dyer, and then the name of the product. I pin it in place with stainless steel pins. I know some other people use clips and stuff, which would be fine. These are stainless steel, so they will not rust or hurt the fabric. And so I haven't had any issues yet. But if you're concerned about that, you certainly can get little plastic clips and stuff to hold your fabric on. So this is how I store each one of them. I leave the labels on them. I don't write on them or anything until I'm ready to use them. And there's another one, Be Stitch Me Coffee Club. And then if it's a smaller piece and I can fit it on a half board, I will put it on a half board. So, and then again, I put the same information. So I have them, and I keep them by size in my drawer. So I have 2 drawers with fabric in them, you know, anywhere from 14 count all the way up to 40 count. And they fit in there just fine. I really probably need a 3rd drawer, but I don't have a 3rd drawer because my fabric keeps growing. But this works out great for me. I enjoy having them on here, and I can see all my colors when it's stacked up like this. You certainly can see all the colors in your drawer, and you can see the tags as you're going through. You can see the size and stuff, so it works well for me. So you would want to cut your boards to fit whatever you're going to put them in. If you're going to put them in a drawer or something, you want to cut it to make sure that it would fit in the drawer properly for the drawer to close. If you're putting them in a storage box, again, the same things. You want to make sure that the size is going to fit in and close properly, and it works out great. I don't like keeping my fabric in the plastic because I understand that heat and humidity can get to the plastic, so I'd rather have it out in the open. And if you're putting it in something that you're worried about degrading the fabric by what it's touching, you can always put some acid-free tissue down and then put them down. So, and it'll be fine. And these boards are acid-free because they're meant for comic book storage. One other thing that I neglected to mention on your fabric when you're marking it is always mark the direction of your fabric. Because there are times when you're going to have a piece of fabric that's maybe a little bit smaller, a little bit longer than the other side, and it has to be a certain orientation for your design to work. So always mark the direction of your fabric so you know what the top is. So on this one, I'm going to take the top, and this is going to be my top because I know that's the way it goes, and I'm just going to mark an arrow. So that way I know that that's the top of my fabric, that I never get confused as to where I'm starting my piece, or if I'm in the middle of stitching it and it doesn't look like anything that I can recognize, then at least I can look at the arrow and say, okay, this is the direction I'm going in. So that was just another tip about marking your fabric and making sure that you know where you're heading. Let's talk about bead storage. So this is one of my favorite bead storage, and this is from, I should have looked at it before I did that, Bead Storage Solutions. I got it at Joann's. It holds 78 of these little, let's take the cover off. There's a cover that protects it so nothing falls out. It has 78 of these little containers that hold beads. And this is where I store my Mill Hill beads. I also have Toho beads and other beads in here. Beads that are from extra kits that I did that were Mill Hill beads. So they're in here as well. But this is a great storage system. I will tell you that it is a little expensive. It is, I want to say it's $50, maybe $60 at the Joann's. So make sure if you want to get this system that you use a 50 or 60% off coupon so it makes it worthwhile, but it does hold a lot of beads. You can see everything that's in the case. And I also put, if it's a Mill Hill, I put the number of the Mill Hill on it and I put the beads in it. And these are all in numerical order. And then you'll see ones that say Toho. Toho is a Japanese bead. If you're going to buy beads that are not Mill Hill, and you can buy beads that are not Mill Hill that are just as good quality and probably better quality as far as some of them, because I've noticed that even in Mill Hill you have beads that are not all uniform. Toho beads are from they're Japanese beads, and they are all uniform beads. They are beautifully done. They're a lot cheaper. Give me a minute and I'll show you what they look like and how they come. And I prefer them if I can find a match for what I'm doing or something similar. It doesn't have to be exact. They come in 11/0, which is like a regular Mill Hill without the numbers on them, so same size. And then they come also in 15. In 15, I'm looking for one here. There we go. The 15s are like the mini Mill Hills. They're the smaller beads. And you can get them in a variety of sizes and colors. So this is, I love this display. It makes it much easier for me to store my Mill Hills and my other beads and see exactly what I have. Hold on a minute, I was about to lose something on the floor. There we go. So, and it does have a cover. You can just snap it on and they're not going anywhere. They're safe in there. So that's what I use for bead storage. I also use these little ones. Again, you can get this at Joann's. I'm sure Michael's might have something like this for bead storage. I actually think I've seen some of these at the Dollar Tree. So in this particular one, I am holding Miss Christmas Eve, which I need to get beaded. And I have all the beads that I need for her. It just happened to be the same amount of holes here, but if I needed more than one, I would have more than one. And I label each one what it is. And then if there's any beads left, they will go into my carrier and I will peel this off, make a new one, or try to stick that one. Sometimes they don't work when you do that. And I will use this for my next beading project. But it's safe, they're not coming out. It's not like the Mill Hill little packages, which are not very secure. If you bump them around, you might pop one open. This is very safe. It's in the jewelry department of both craft stores, and you can pick that up and store your beads this way. Now, when I'm beading, I know a lot of people wonder how you're going to hold your beads and stuff, and it is a little strenuous to make sure you're not losing your beads or dropping them and getting them stitched properly. Years ago, they had the Stitch Buddy, which when you open it up, it's just a mini CD case, and it's sticky on both sides. And you can still find this. It's under a different name now, but I find it a little cumbersome to use this at times, try to get my beads out. And I came up with another solution, and it is called my bead ring. So this has the tacky on it, and I keep a sheet over it to keep it from getting tacky, and I can stick beads, whatever color I'm working at that time, I can just dip it in, and I can pull the beads off of it and use it that way, and it'll stay on my finger. It's adjustable. I can put it on any finger, and it works great for when I'm beading. I don't have to try to find the little case. The case is moving around. This is on my finger no matter where I want to put it. If I want to put it on my thumb, and I can just take my needle and take the bead off and bead. So this works absolutely fabulous, and I'll show you how you can make your own bead ring. So what you will need is go into the Joann's or another craft store. I know Hobby Lobby does not carry this stuff, but you can get ring blanks. They're just little blanks that you use to make rings in the jewelry department. And then you will need a mat that's called a bead along mat. So this mat is used for jewelry makers so that they can keep track of their beads and stuff, and it is very sticky. It's sticky on both sides. Oh, sorry, sticky on both sides. And you can use it to hold beads. I took it and I just I took a dimension that I wanted. I think the ring is, yeah, it's 1 inch. I took a little piece of, this is like a polymer or something. You can find a flat item. Any flat item that you can glue to your ring would work. And then cut, measure, draw a circle, draw whatever, a square, whatever you're going to make your ring, and cut it out. And I used E6000 to glue the ring to this piece of plastic. And then I also used E6000 to glue the mat to the piece of plastic so it will not come off. I did not use the sticky back because I felt like it would pull off, and I wanted it to be secure and work. Now, bead-along mats are great because if it gets dirty and it's not sticky like you want it to be, you can rinse it off under the water, let it dry, and the stickiness will come back. So this is a great idea for beading if you just want something easy to control your beads while you're stitching and not worry about where the plastic thing is. Is it sliding around somewhere? Is it difficult to get into? Because that's one of the first things I realized, that this thing has a lip, and that made it hard for me to get my needle in to get my beads. This side doesn't, but it's a large object. And this I felt was much easier. I can work on one color bead at a time, stick it on there, and do my beading. So you certainly can do that quite easy. Look for the rings and the Bead-A-Lawn mat at your craft store, Joann's, Michael's, whatever craft store you have. I know that the ring blanks may be at Hobby Lobby, but I know they do not carry, I don't believe they carry the Bead-A-Lawn mat. I think I got that at Joann's. So you can find those items there and you can bead that way. Okay, so I was talking about Japanese seed beads. This is how Japanese seed bead comes. You can get them in a beading store or another kind of craft store. You'd have to check and see. I remember when I lived in Florida, we had a store that was just a jewelry craft store where they sold all the gems and other things, and they sold these beads. And these are my favorite because for a package, it was $6.38, and you can see there is a ton of beads in here. A ton. It goes by weight. So this one here is a full one. I haven't put this one in my bead thing, but it was $5.50, and I am almost positive all of these beads that I purchased were in a clearance bin. So I always make sure that if I'm in a bead store or a jewelry crafting store, that I buy clearance ones because it's a lot cheaper. So they come in different sizes, like any other bead. This is an 8/0 bead. This one is the 11/0, which is the regular Mill Hill size. And then they have the mini beads, which is the 15/0, and those are the smaller beads. I don't know if you can see that or not, the difference in the sizes. But they come in a huge package for like $5, $6. And there's tons in there, tons. I cannot put all these beads in that little container. I would have to take up probably 2 up to 3 containers to get them out of here into those little containers in my set. So you can see that I emptied this and filled one container with this one, and that's how much it took. So that gives you an idea of how many beads come in there. And they're Japanese. You always want to make sure that they say Japanese seed beads. These are the best ones. Do not buy other brands unless they say they're from Japan, because those are the ones that are symmetrical in their sizing, and they're beautiful beads to work with. Let's talk about hoops. Now, I would talk about Q-snaps too, but I don't own Q-snaps. I'm not a fan of Q-snaps, only because they seem a little heavier than a hoop for me, and it's much easier for me to use a hoop in order to stitch on. So I can't do in hand. I find that my tension's not correct, and I really enjoy doing a hoop. Now, these are the ones that I loved for many years, and this particular one has the little plastic edge on it like this. Those are the ones that are stronger, that these are more likely to hold your fabric. These are older ones. I think they were through Doris. I'm not positive. It says made in Korea. It's not made in China. It's made in Korea, and they're a sturdy, strong hoop. And you will see when I bend it, it doesn't really bend the plastic. Now, if you have some of these that don't have this plastic grip, try to bend your colored hoop, and you'll see if it bends real easily, and this isn't really hard to squeeze in, then it's probably not going to hold your fabric tight enough. So I use these for many years. I still use them for small projects, but I have gone over to the Morgan hoop. I really enjoy the Morgan hoop because the Morgan hoops have a lip inside, and there are plastic ones that have this as well, but I really enjoy this one. As you can see, it has a ridge on the inside, and then it has the little lip sticking out on the outside, and it holds your fabric really tight, and I like that. I like that it keeps the tension tight for me. Now you'll see I have little Sharpie marks marked on these. I put the Sharpie marks on this because when they are processed and molded, they fit a certain way snugly. So if I mark exactly where this should line up together for this to fit snugly in it. If I didn't do that and I just put this in here willy-nilly, let me take it back out, and just stick it some other way, and put it in here, you will see it's gapped. You see all this gapping? This side has no gapping. I'm pushing it tight. There's a big gap right here. So of course, if I push it all the way, I can control that gap, but I don't want to do that. I want it to fit naturally the way it was molded in the machine. So I put little Sharpie marks, and I will tell you they will wear off over time. I'm not overly concerned about it because it is Sharpie. It normally doesn't come off. It just fades a little through the wear. And that's how I keep them, so that when I have it shut, it has a seal all the way around without me even having to tighten the tension. The other thing I like to do is I like to stitch in the well. So stitching in the well is putting your fabric the opposite way that most people put their fabric in. So most people would take their fabric, put their hoop in, right, the hoop down, take your piece of fabric, lay it across your hoop, and then you would lock this one over the top. Open up, there we go. Right? And this is how people stitch. I don't stitch this way. I don't stitch this way because I find this a little awkward to do. Because in my hand that's going to the back of this, I have to reach in further to get my needle into the thread. And then when I flip over to finish my thread, then I'm going to run into a wall if I'm close to it. And it makes it very difficult to slide your stitches under. I mean, unless you're pin stitching both starting and finishing, but you're not running under. And I run under quite a bit. I will pin stitch to start, and sometimes I don't want to pin stitch to finish. I'll just run under. And so this makes it very difficult for you to stitch and then have to finish off your thread. And so I do it the opposite way. I put my big one down, open it up, put my fabric on, line up my dots. I know this is at 11 and 1. If I keep the head of my thing straight, I know where 11 and 1 is. And I just push in, and then I can tighten. And when you're tighten, you're just screwing it in, right? And then pulling your fabric to tighten it. Okay, screw it down a little more, and then I tighten again to make sure it's drum tight. Okay, that is drum tight. Okay, if you have a hard time with the wing nuts, there is a little tool you can get, and it looks like this, and it fits over the wing nuts to tighten and loosen them. So you just put it on, and you can tighten or you can loosen, and you don't have to twist these if they hurt your hands. So this is the side I'm stitching on right here. I'm stitching what they call in the well, and when I have to finish off a thread, when I flip over, I'm not going to hit any walls to run some thread under to finish off my thread. It makes it so much easier. And then when I'm stitching the back, the fabric is where my hand is. I don't have to reach up in to stitch. I can reach it easily with the fabric like this, and the front is quite easy. So that's how I stitch when I'm using a hoop, and these are the hoops that I prefer. You can get these anywhere, Amazon, 1-2-3 Stitch. I don't know if Joann's or any of them carry the Morgan hoops, but they are called Morgan, M-O-R-G-A-N hoops. They are used for embroidery, punch needle, cross stitch, anything where you have to hold your fabric taut. And another thing that I use, especially if you've got all this fabric here, is I use these little magnetized, and I think they call them cord keepers. So, and they come in different lengths. This is quite a long one, and it'll hold all your extra fabric for you. There are 2 strong magnets on each end. This particular one is, let me see how long these are. This is an 18, looks like an 18-inch length from thread to thread, and it'll hold all your fabric in the loop. Now, if you don't have a ton of fabric and this is not the length you want, then I just tie them to make them smaller. So I make them the length that I need them, and I just do a little tie off. And that way, if I have a ton of fabric, I can untie the little knot and make them larger, or I can keep them small if I don't have a lot of fabric. So what I do is I just roll my fabric, and put my little magnet one side and then the other, and it'll hold my fabric where I want it. So I end up doing both sides to keep my fabric out of my way. And I just tuck it into my hoop. And of course you don't have to tuck it into your hoop if you don't want to. You can just roll it up on the side and then lock your little magnets in place. And then I can stitch whatever I want to stitch. Now normally I only use this small one when I am doing a much smaller project, but if I'm doing a larger project, I use this hoop. This is a 5-inch hoop. This is a 7-inch hoop. So with the magnets, you can see I've still got plenty of room to stitch. And they also make great needle minders because it is a magnet. So you can just lay your needle on there, and you don't need an extra weight on your fabric like a needle minder. I don't use needle minders, again, because it's added weight that I have to hold in my hand for an extended amount of time, and it gets uncomfortable. So I much prefer to have these on there. And a lot of times I won't even put one on this side. I just roll it and hold it with my hand, and I'm stitching because I'm left-handed. If I was the opposite, then I would do it the opposite way. But I'm a lefty, so I roll all of my fabric in my right hand, and then I stitch. And then I just lay my needle down when I want to rest it for whatever reason, changing it or whatever I'm doing. So that's how I work on my hoop. Let's take a minute to talk about scroll frames, because I don't normally use a scroll frame, but if I'm doing beading, like you can see, I have Miss Christmas Eve here that she needs to be beaded. She's completely finished without her beads. I will have to put her on a scroll frame in order for me to bead her, because I feel like that's the easiest way to me to do it. But what I do use is I kind of DIY'd some clips that I can use to hold the fabric taut on the sides. So you can see here, one is clipped on, and all this is a piece of double-sided Velcro, and these little clips that are like, we used to call these bed clips, when you clip clip them to the sheets to hold them on the bed. But you can get these at Joann's. You might be able to get them at any kind of sewing supply. So I don't know if Hobby Lobby carries anything like this. You can actually buy the ones that belong on the bed at Walmart, and you know, they're on little clip strips or something. They come in a 4-pack that are meant to grab the sheets, to pin the sheets underneath the mattress. But I got these, and then I bought a roll of Velcro, double-sided Velcro, and I just slip it on. So now I can just slip this under here, and I can tighten it and loosen it as I need it. And just clip it on. Here, let me get it back so you can see. So it's on there. I clip it on, right? And then I can just tighten the Velcro where I want it. And it'll hold it taut. So these work great. If you don't have those, you're trying to figure out a way to keep your fabric taut on your scroll frame. This is an easy DIY. You can get Velcro, double-sided Velcro at anywhere, including Walmart. And I'm almost sure they have these clips too at the Walmart. And they work great to keep your fabric as taut as you want. The other issue that I have when it comes to my scroll frame is how I'm going to hold it. Now I have a Lowry stand. I have a Lowry stand with an attachment. I have a Kay's Creation lap one, and I find that none of them really hold a longer scroll frame steady. Not steady like I want it to be steady. I don't want one end kind of moving as I'm trying to bead and do other things. So I found, and I'm just going to pull this out of the way a little. I've got so much stuff on my desk, my gosh. What I found were these clamps. These are on Amazon. These clamp onto your table. So this is the part that clamps onto a table. And then this clamp clamps on to your scroll rod on each end. So there's 2 of these, 1 and 2. So this is what they look like. They have adjustments. They're on a ball, so they can go in any direction you want them to go in. And they have, this clip is extremely strong, and it has like a rubberized mat on it so that it will hold on to your table. So at the end of this, I will show a picture of what these look like holding my scroll frame so you get an idea. I think they were like $20. They came out of China on Amazon. I'll put a link, but they are super strong and my scroll rod is not going anywhere. And I can position it the way I want it in order to do my beading while I'm at my desk. So I will include a picture after I finish this on what that looks like pinned to my desk. The last thing I want to talk about is finishing in shapes. So there are several different items you can use to do finishing. I know it's nerve-wracking. There are tons of videos out there to show you how to finish things in a frame, how to finish ornaments and stuff, but these are a couple of supplies that will help you get this done easier than trying to draw out a circle or draw out an oval or a square or anything else. Square is kind of easy, but when you talk about shapes, this is the easy way to do it. So the first thing that I ended up buying, I went on Amazon, I went on eBay because I knew about these templates years ago because they are used for scrapbooking. So these are Fisker templates. And as you can see, this one's a circle one. It is a plastic template that you can lay on paper, and it has a cutting item that you can use, but you can certainly use a pencil and go around and cut a circle out of mat board, chipboard, whatever you need to do to make your shape. You can also get the cutter that goes with this. I don't think it's necessary. It's quite easy to draw and then cut out the circle. And they have them in different shapes. So this one is the circle one. Sorry, the circle one. This one here is the oval one. And that's the ones I use most of the time when I'm doing ornaments. I'm doing ovals or I'm doing circles. If I'm doing squares, that's quite easy to cut without needing a shape. These have a little shapes on the ends as well that make it kind of nice if you want to cut a little piece of cardboard or chipboard or whatever and make a little outside edge for whatever you're doing. And then I went on Amazon and I found this because that's very limiting, those two, because there's not a ton of different shapes. I found this one, and this is used by drafters and stuff, and it was on Amazon, and it's got tons of sizes. This goes from 1 1/4 all the way up to 4 1/2. Nope, hold on. 1 1/4 all the way up to 3 inches. Nope, 3 1/2 inches. So that's a lot of circles if you're doing ornaments, and it works great. Same thing. You just trace it, cut it out. Makes it quite easy to get it straight. If you don't have anything like that, then certainly, if you're doing circles especially, get yourself a compass. This is a Fisker's compass. It actually came from Walmart. And you just draw your circles with this. So if I wanted a 3-inch circle, I'm just going to measure this and make 1 1/2. You're going to do it 1 1/2 for 3, so you have it. If it's a 3-inch circle, it's 1 1/2. If it's a 2-inch circle, you put it at 1 inch. And there is a pointed side that's got a metal point, and the other side has a pencil nip tip. And you just twist it. You lay it down, hold it, and twist it all the way around, and it's going to make your circle that you need the size in. And these are quite inexpensive. I think this was less than $9 over at the Walmart in the stationery department. And it works by twisting these, and it also gives you extra lids. So it is a great item if you just want to grab something to make circles and cut them out. This is awesome. The other thing that I wanted to share, and this is a nice tip as well, so we're just going to go into tips here, is these are for needles, yarn needles. And they go on the tips of the yarn needles to keep them from poking anything. But what makes these great, and you can get these anywhere they sell yarn, Hobby Lobby, Walmart, wherever you go, is if you're traveling with your scissors and you want to throw them in your bag, you can stick one of these on the tips of your scissors and it does the same thing. It'll hold your scissors and keep the tip from stabbing your fabric, stabbing something else through your bag, and they work great. They come in several sizes. And for these scissors, let's see, that one doesn't necessarily fit, but if I had some of the smaller tip scissors, that would be great. But these go on there and it will stay on there until I take it off when I'm traveling with my scissors. So they are awesome. So look for those. They are in the yarn section where they sell the yarn supplies, and they are for knitting needles to cover the tips. So these work really great. I talked about my seam fix the last video, and someone asked me again about the name of it. So this is the name of it. It is called Seam Fix. They are purple with this little rubber nib on them. You pull it apart and there's your seam ripper. And they come in two sizes. This is a little mini one, and then you can get a full-size seam ripper. These I bought at Joann's. You might be able to get them on Amazon or at Walmart.com, but these I bought at Joann's, and they're called Seam Fix. Another thing that I showed last video was this magnet. So this is an extending magnet where if you drop your needles on the sofa, on the floor, that this will pick them up so you can find it. So you can go through the creases and creases of your sofa, and I've done that many times. Or if they thought they fell through to the floor, I can run this through the bottom of the floor. It'll pick up my needles for me. I don't know how much this thing cost in a scrapbook store, but I can tell you that you can go over to Harbor Freight, and I saw them there just the other day when I was in there, and you can get these for under $4. I think they were $3.87 or something like that. And they're on a little sidekick. Sometimes they're at the registers, but just ask them for an extending or a telescoping magnet. And they are great. So you can get those really cheap. They probably cost $13, $14 if you try to get one that's meant for stitching. So make sure if you need that to go over to Harbor Freight.